Hey, good morning, afternoon, or evening, good people, wherever you are, wherever you happen to be, and however we're together. Thanks for being here for season five's season finale of Dave's Head. I'm Dave. What's in my head? Well, standard time fatigue is kind of what's in my head. Daylight savings time ended on the East Coast and just about everywhere else in the country back on November 3rd. Since then, I've kind of noticed this decrease in energy and in some ways happiness. I don't attribute it to anything really other than the fact that the times change and it's just I'm a freaking plant with no roots or something because every fall this kind of happens where I go into this energy lull for a little bit and then I break out conveniently right around the time of Thanksgiving, holidays, my birthday. But I think there's other factors as well. You know, there's workload, there's the amount of things I'm involved in, there's professional stresses. Um, I haven't had time to or energy really to work out like I'm used to working out on a certain cadence, pretty much almost every day for years and years and years. But I noticed that there was a shift when standard time returned. I believe, if I have it correctly, that I golfed the day of daylight savings time. I can't stand when people say daylight savings times. No, there's only one time. But anyway, I believe I golfed the morning of the time shift, which I think did not start my energy usage in the right way. But this is something also that's happened time and time and time again, year after year, as it relates to daylight savings time, especially in the spring. Um, it's more noticeable, and I think it's understandable because we lose an hour in the spring, but we gain one back in the fall, which kind of doesn't make sense. You would think that you would gain an hour of sleep. We all need more sleep, and that it would work into our benefit, but it really doesn't. At least not for me. There's an article on CBSNews.com that talks about daylight savings time and season affective disorder and some expert tips, and they talked about where they reference a doctor noting that every time we interrupt our sleep pattern, that interferes with our health, increases the risk of cardiovascular disease, heart attacks, and an increased risk for motor vehicle accidents. Now, I've had none of those things as far as I know. And I've never heard of those three things being a direct correlation between daylight savings time or Eastern Standard Time going into effect. But apparently it's true. They say about 3 to 5% of people also affect SAD, which is seasonal affective disorder. I'm not self-diagnosing myself at any capacity. I think I'm a little bit overtaxed in some areas of my life by either work or organizations I'm part of, lack of sleep, those types of things. And the sun being a lot less in the sky does not help at all. Can we take a step back and talk about this whole daylight savings time thing? Daylight savings time thing. I just did it again. I think we've outgrown this whole concept. If you look up the statistics and what the historical reasons for daylight savings time was, I don't think it really applies to today. We are much more energy efficient, even if we're still hanging on to some inefficient technologies. We have other technologies outside of energy that impact our lives to make the ability for us to consume a lot less possible. And we spend a lot more time in our houses, traveling, doing so many things that don't really impact them, isn't really impacted by the amount of light that's there. So do we need this whole shift back and forth? And by the way, there's a part of this country that doesn't participate. I believe it's out by Arizona, Nevada, somewhere out there. And so if they don't participate, there may be a good reason, maybe no good reason at all. Why do we have to keep doing this song and dance every year? Just keep the time the same. I'd rather stay with daylight savings time, which is kind of the opposite of what I'm trying to say here. But not for the reasons that we started using it, but for the simple fact I like more sunlight. I don't like the sun rising so early so late and setting so early. I don't like the fact that I wake up in the dark and I go to sleep in the dark. I like to wake up when it's nice and bright out. The sun being the reason I wake up. But here's some tips for adjusting to daylight savings time or daylight standard time and seasonal affective disorder. They say use light, Duh. This is what I'm talking about. I want more light. But it's important to balance sleep with having some light in the morning. Consider light box therapy, they recommend, or special lamps that mimic the sun. Now, right now, I have 5 lights on me for this recording if you're watching on YouTube or Spotify. But opening the shades and introducing whatever sunrise occurs for you, at least getting that light in, that natural light, opening all the blinds in the house. Although maybe creep some people out at night. You can get motorized blinds and connect them to Alexa and do all types of stuff where it automatically opens on sunrise and sunset. I have a couple smart switches in my house that turn on lights at sunset as opposed to certain times so that you kind of keep that light going at least. Number 2, they say regular exercise, which is something I'm trying to get back to, and it's going to be something I focus on in the near future. Regular exercise can increase serotonin levels and boost mood. I agree. I feel like when I get up in the morning, or at least when I used to, when I get up in the morning, work out, I'm all sweaty, I have my tea or have my smoothie or some combination of the two, I'm ready to go for the day. I'm good to go. They say be aware of the warning signs. For some people, increased light and movement might not be enough to avoid SAD, or seasonal affective disorder, or depression. So be aware, be aware. But I do want to just move to a period where we're not doing this whole back and forth song and dance thing every year with daylight savings time or Eastern Standard Time. Just pick one. Just pick one. Let's stick with it. We'll be okay. What's in My Head is sponsored by Adapt to Adopt. Adapt to Adopt provides recreational support to adopted children and youth through recreational support groups, mentoring programs, sports and community service projects, and more. For more information, visit rebrand.ly/DHPA2A. Rebrand.ly/DHPA2A. The next thing that's on my mind, and the last thing that's on my mind, is a new country. This is the season finale of season 5. Wow. Season 5 of Dave's Head Podcast. By the time we're together again, as you know, we take off December and January because it's the golden child's birthday time period. We got to take off all that time just to recover and be back for another season. But by the time we come back in February, we'll have a new president. All signs so far are pointing to our country being an entire circus. If you haven't been paying attention, we'll have a TV doctor who wanted to go right back into schools during COVID, then had to walk that back in a statement and apologize. He'll be heading up Medicare and Medicaid. We'll have an anti-vax and wild conspiracy theorist heading up Health and Human Services. The richest person in the world who took over Twitter, made it X, and saw its value drop by more than 79%, according to Fidelity. He'll be overseeing government efficiency. And the best one yet, which might be the worst one yet, a man who left Congress just days before a report was to come out about his sex with minors and trafficking. He'll be Attorney General. Yeah. But now a hacker has stolen some files that were securely shared between attorneys. One of them being the client, I think, who was suing him or making claims about him, and some other people. And it provides damning, incriminating testimony. So we're at this point today. We're not sure what this hacker is going to do. Apparently, they know this hacker has stolen stuff, but not sure if he's going to just disseminate it to the world or put it up for ransom or what. But this is where we are. This is how we're existing as a country. That those people are going to become high figures in our government starting in 2025. I had to think about the year for a second because I'm like, wait, what year are we coming to that we're still dealing with this type of stuff? 2025. I'm trying to think what year Star Trek started. I think we got a little ways to go before we get to the time period and all that stuff where we have the prime directives and just things that make us better as humans. And I said many times before, not on this podcast, but I've said before randomly that I want to fast forward to the time period where we're living in a Star Trek world. And it's not to say that evil didn't exist during that time period, but as a society, at least we were better. Go back and watch Star Trek First Contact, and they talk about how society grew after we basically almost destroyed ourselves. We got to a point where we lived as a civilized, mostly society. But coming back to our issues, at least we won't have um, sore losers, for lack of a better term, going to the Capitol and destroying people and attacking people this time. It's amazing how losing has been handled. If you just look at the major elections every 4 years, go back and look to 2008 and 12 and 16 and 20 and now 2024. Go look at how the candidates on the losing side in their particular party and their particular supporters handled losing those races. It's just a dichotomy of differences. But it's also amazing to me those who voted against their best interests are now surprised by some of these cabinet picks from a man who openly campaigned against their interests. The shock and disbelief is pure comedy. I mean, I tell you, I'm going to punch you in the mouth for weeks and months. The next time I see you, as some people say, it's on site. I'm going to punch you in the mouth on site next time I see you. Every time we're on a conference call or Zoom or something, I say, you know what? Next time we're in person, I'm going to punch you in the mouth. I register for something. I tell you I register for something. You register for it too because you want to be there as well. And I told you for months, I'm going to punch you in the mouth. And so we walk into the same building together, different doors. We kind of head towards the intersecting path. We get to the intersecting path and I punch you in the mouth. And you go, what'd you do that for? Well, I told you I was going to do it. I told you I was going to punch you in the mouth. I'm just doing what I said I was going to do. That's where we are. The gas, oh my God. Yeah, he told you what he was going to do and he's going to start doing it. And so I listen, I seriously and sincerely, two big words, seriously and sincerely hope for the best for this country the next 4 years. But I understand, and I hope that some people out there understand, that sympathy levels across this country will be at an all-time low for a large amount of people because they feel very much that we try to tell you. And at this point, you voted for this. Now you deal with it. And so don't come to us for support and help. Don't, reach out for any support from those who try to tell you. And it's very understandable. People are frustrated. They're tired of saying, hey, let me show you this, and you won't look. But then the election happens, and then you go, oh my God, look at that. We're like, dude, we've been holding this forever, forever. You voted for this, and as it used to be said for many, many years, Republican talking point, it was a huge, big thing, especially for those targeted at the less fortunate, poor in this country. Over the next 4 years, pick yourselves up by your bootstraps. That's going to be the attitude of a lot of people in this country. If things go south, don't come to this person or that person because we try to tell you. Pick yourselves up by your bootstraps. But again, I sincerely and seriously hope that the next 4 years are not crazy, not terrible, not tragic, that we can continue forward, somehow continue growing and getting better as a country. But that's what's in my head. So 2024 wills and estate planning study done by caring.com, they talk about that only 32% of Americans have a will, 6% decline from 2023, and the first decrease since 2020. In 2023, 14% of U.S. adults give a lack of assets as their reason for neglecting estate planning. The number of white Americans with a will decreased by 3% in 2020, while the estate planning amongst Black Americans decreased by 19% in 2020. Something happened around 2020. Don't know what it is. Young adults age 18 to 34, which I'm no longer a part of that group, are the only age group that has not seen a decline in estate planning rates since 2020. Now, a company in Colorado published an article, federal or funeral crowdfunding is not the answer, funeral planning is. And I bring this up because I've talked about this before. GoFundMe's, they can benefit you, if you're raising money for a good cause and all that. But I have grown, as I stated before, very, very tired of seeing GoFundMe's on social media when someone loses a loved one. While it's not something you want to demean in any way, it's very indicative of the times. And not a lot of people are planning for their own demise, if you will. But according to an article in the New York Times that they talk about in this article, GoFundMe, one of the largest fundraising sites, says that 13% of its campaigns created in 2017 were described as memorials, which include funerals and is the area that's fastest growing amongst GoFundMe. Now imagine this was 2017. We've been through a pandemic. We've had so much more time since then. I imagine it's way up there. Not to mention, look at your social media. You see them all the time. Some concerns this article voiced about GoFundMe's is that funeral directors, believe it or not, at people's most vulnerable emotional times are asking relatives to sign documents to remove fault if things go wrong with these fundraisers. And there are also concerns about funeral directors upselling services to match the funds that are raised. Think about this. You raise $20,000 accidentally for your loved one. Funeral costs $5,000 to $7,000 or something like that, whatever it is today. But they're still raising the price up to $20,000 to match what you raise. How bad is that, right? Think about that. They say something that's so true. The ultimate goal of estate planning, and this includes funeral preparations, is to have everything buttoned up so that your children, relatives, friends don't have to worry about anything. That's the ultimate goal of estate planning. They say, quote, I've had people sit in my office and tell me how they went into debt or took out money to pay for their parents' funerals because they did not feel that what they could afford was worthy of their parents. We all have a responsibility, right? To make sure that when we do pass, when something bad happens to us, and we'll get into it today as well, even while we're still alive, that we prepare for things to go wrong or for the ultimate going wrong, right? With passing away. But talking about planning and the end of life and the ultimate end of days, because I'm going to talk about this with my guest today, Adam Zuckerman. Let me tell you a little bit about him. He's an attorney, MBA, and Eisenhower Fellow with a diverse background that spans finance, media, consumer packaged goods, and clean energy. He founded Fosterly, a community that connects innovators and entrepreneurs as they start and scale their endeavors in the greater Washington, D.C. area. His expertise extends to digital process transformation, go to market and customer acquisition strategies, strategic partnerships, government affairs engagement, and strategic planning, with a keen focus on the fourth industrial revolution and how organizations can positive or position themselves for future success. Me, I just watch football on Saturdays. But lastly, he's the founder of Buried in Work, a company that simplifies estate planning, end of life tasks, and estate transitions for individuals, families, and businesses. Adam, welcome to Dave's Head. How's it going?
Hey, Dave, that is a tremendous introduction. Thank you so much. I love the stats.
One of the things, I'm a numbers guy, right? I'm a math guy, 1 0. So you look at these things and you see that just a large, I wasn't expecting those percentages, number one, that a large percentage of this country just doesn't plan for what
Mhm.
happens next, what happens tomorrow and every tomorrow. And so, I'm looking forward to our conversation just because, this is something that's intimate to me because I have aging parents and, having those conversations, not exactly something that they want to have. So, looking forward to talking to you about this. I know I gave an intro, as you said, but I like to have my guests introduce and talk to
Yeah.
the audience about themselves. So if you could take a moment, tell the people who you are, what you do, and what you're about.
Yeah, sure thing. And I'll start off with a few more stats that you might be interested in. So every single day in America, 10 to 12,000 people turn 65, which means that by the end of the decade, there's going to be twice as many people age 65 and older than there are today. And on average, women are actually outliving their male husbands by 5.8 years, which means is if you're looking at households with traditional family values where there's separation of duties, and obviously this is not every family, not every relationship, but there's an entire generation of women that will have a significant difficulty understanding what their finances are, how to pay bills, where to pay bills, not because they can't do it, but because they simply just haven't focused on it before. And that is a significant problem that we need to solve. Now, for my background, like you said, I'm an attorney, I have an MBA. I was not expecting to be in this industry, and I absolutely love it. And here's how I got into it. My father was over at my house one day, and we were doing some woodworking in the basement. And he walks up the stairs and he goes, Adam, I'm tired. And when he says he's tired, it's different than if you and I say it. When we say it, we take a nap, we drink some coffee. When he says it, he ends up going to the hospital. And the reason why is that 6.5 years prior, he was diagnosed with leukemia for the first time. I actually donated bone marrow to him, which is podcast in its own right. So he goes to the hospital, runs some tests. They check him into Hopkins in Baltimore on a Thursday, and he passes away 12 days later. Way too quick. And he was organized. At least we thought he was organized. He was a senior executive in the IRS. Uh, he had spreadsheets that he made and lists of bank accounts, but it just turned out that it wasn't as organized as we'd hope, because what you think is organized is not necessarily what other people think is organized. And oftentimes, in the line of work that I'm in now, we hear people go, "Oh, I'm fine. My kids have the keys to the safe. They know where my passwords are." It's not enough. So I hopped in. I was executor on the estate and helping my mom transition everything. And I took really detailed notes of everything that I was doing. On this date at this time, I had a conversation for this amount of time with this company. I used this template, and here's how I'm tracking the information of what the next steps are. And if I don't hear back by this date, follow up, yada, yada, yada. And when I met with my mom's financial planner to show her what I put together, at the end of the conversation, she told me it was the most comprehensive estate transition she'd ever seen in her life. Now, you and I, close to the same age, I imagine, mid-40s, let's say. I probably look a little bit older than you on video, more gray hair. And I watched cartoons growing up. And I had the devil on my shoulder from one that's going, "She's lying to you. She just doesn't want you to move your mom's money. You've got power of attorney, buttering you up." But the angel on my other shoulder was going, "Yeah, what you put together is kind of organized. Maybe you should share it with other people." So I showed some people, my age, my mom's age, a bunch of others. And every single person said, "Type up notes, make a website, help some people out." And that's what I did. So we accidentally created a website, accidentally in quotes, that I thought was just going to be a few posts. And I posted on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Nextdoor. And in a week, I had over 10,000 visits to the website. And the rest is history. Within a week, I had an inbox of hundreds of emails back and forth from people thanking me for what I'd done, asking for clarification on some of the stuff, but most importantly, asking not only for the resource of why to do something, but if I could help them do it. And that's where Buried in Work, really came to be. We have scaled significantly. We are being called the most comprehensive end-of-life resource in America now, not by us, but, and we'd like to say it too now, but by the Funeral Director Association's community industry magazine. There's one called Connecting Directors that said that. And we've got a variety of resources that are there to help people out. And the stat that you opened with, saying that a third of Americans don't have a will, don't have a trust, is really important for people to get their heads wrapped around. And the reason why is that most people say, "I don't have a lot of assets. I don't need a will or a trust. I don't need an estate plan." But the reality is that if you don't have a will, not even a trust, but if you don't have a will, you actually do have an estate plan. And that estate plan is just decided for you by the state that you live in. That's called dying intestate or intestate, depending on, the person's accent. But that's what Buried in Work is and how I got into it. There's a lot of people working on the project now. We've got close to 2,000 articles, 90 checklists, guides, card games, the most comprehensive estate organization system you can buy called the Clear Kit, and a whole host of other stuff that happy to chat about today. But thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, thanks for coming on. I will say I've not been on a ton of websites, but your website is by far the most comprehensive. Just, my normal research where I look at somebody's website, background, bio, LinkedIn, all that stuff. And I try to pull things that, appeal to me to make questions out of or topics to discuss and those types of things. And there was just so many things. There's so many different sections of your website. And I'm just like, wait a minute. I know about a lot of this stuff, but I know a lot of people probably don't know a lot about this stuff, but there's so much stuff here that people probably don't know about.
Yeah.
And so, I try to narrow this somehow into less than 10 questions, and I struggled, honestly.
No, and that's okay. Like, if you want to go to 15, that's fine.
Yeah.
The funny thing about this is that when most people think of a will and estate planning, they think of just transitioning your assets. That's it. I die. What do I have? Who gets it? Is what it comes down to. But there is so much more to that. And it's not just what you need to do and the organization that you need to have. So who needs to be contacted? When do they need to be contacted? What templates do you use? What happens to you if you're in a hospital and you can't advocate for yourself? Who gets to make medical decisions for you? But there's this really quirky, morbid, fun side of the entire ecosystem as well. And that's what we try and spotlight too, to make it really approachable, like a coffin confessor, someone who stands up and talks at your funeral and gives messages to people that are there after you've already passed away. There's like regeneration, recomposition specialists. So after you die, if you don't want to be buried, how can you be returned to the earth in an eco-friendly way? Even bereavement chefs. Like it's just this wild world that unless you're in it, you're not going to know. And trust me, you don't want to figure this stuff out when you're grieving for the first time.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard of the eco funeral planning, and that there saw something where there's like an egg you could be buried in like
Yeah.
under a tree, and it's kind of cool,
Yep.
creepy, right? You go back and forth. Um, Now I'm curious about the card game, right? Because you
Hmm.
associate card games with fun or quirky or historic, like Trivia Pursuit, that type of stuff.
Yeah.
How do you turn funeral planning or estate planning into a card game? Talk
Okay.
about that.
So my dad has a funky sense of humor, had a funky sense of humor to the point where he was literally in the hospital. This was probably 5 days before he was going to pass away. And he'd been back and forth in Hopkins a bunch over 6.5 years. So we got to know a lot of the nurses. And the nurse walks into the room. I forget what her name is. We'll just say it's Jennifer, whatever, to pick a really bland person's name. It's Jennifer. Why is a giraffe's neck so long? And she looks at him like, Andy, what are you talking about? I'm here to get your vitals. And without missing a beat, he goes, so it can reach its head. Like, stupid, stupid, stupid dad joke. But in the context, kind of funny. And it was that day we just started asking him questions. We knew things weren't going to work out or was trending that direction. Dad, tell me one more story about when you were a kid. Tell me one more story about this. Tell me one more story about that. And when I looked back, that was one of the most rewarding times over those 12 days. I got to learn a little bit more about my dad, knowing that I'm never going to have that opportunity again. So we ended up collaborating with a bunch of individuals, professional game designers. Literally, like the card stock on the game is matte linen feel, so people with dexterity issues can hold on to it better. Clinical social workers to make sure that we were asking questions that were inclusive, that could resonate with as many people as possible. And that game called One More Story turned into 126 cards across 6 categories just to help you connect with your loved ones. That then evolved into a second game called Nothing Left Unsaid. And that's a little bit more serious. So, also 126 cards, multiple categories. They're getting an update soon. Um, but these are the questions for estate planning. Do you have a will? If so, where is it? How do you feel about palliative care? Do you not know what palliative care is? Here's a definition. So if you don't have time to go through a clear kit, if you don't have time to look at the what to do after somebody dies or before somebody dies checklist that we have on the website, it's free. Go find it. These are quick reference cards that you can just get through and learn a lot. And the reason why it's really important to do it is because on average, it takes 570 hours to administer an estate in the country, more than 500 hours, literally. And the reason why is it's a scavenger hunt. You're going to find information that if somebody pointed you to it or explained it to you, it would take you a second to find. So these card games, well, the first one is actually fun to do. Like people are taking them on dates. We were named like one of the best games in the country to take on road trips with your father on Father's Day. Kind of neat. Nothing Left Unsaid is just a little bit more serious, but it helps you get through questions that if you were asking it to your parents, it might be a little bit weird, but the card game is telling you to ask it. So it makes it really accessible.
That's pretty cool. So actually, last year I got my dad a kind of the same idea, but a book for him to write all his memories and answer questions,
Love it.
and he's never opened it. Because I know he it's not funny, but it's funny. He
Yeah.
just never wants to have these conversations. So that's one of the reasons I was looking forward to this conversation with you.
Yeah.
Um, but the card game sounds pretty. Obviously, the second card game is a little more serious, a little more. You've
Mm-hmm.
got to be ready to have this conversation.
Yeah.
But one of the things or one of the answers I've gotten as far as why it's not a priority is a lot of people say this joke like, "Oh, I'm going to live forever."
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people actually kind of have that mindset that, not in the sense I'm going to live forever, but I'm not dying tomorrow. So I don't have to worry about this now. How do we get people away from this mindset and to see really the importance of, the hit by a bus syndrome, right? You
Yeah.
talk about this at work, I might get hit by a bus tomorrow. Well, how
Yeah.
about we actually start planning that way? How do we get people thinking that way?
All right. So there's two sides of the equation. If you are an individual and you're saying, I'm not going to die tomorrow, odds are you're likely correct. I mean, the odds are that tomorrow is the day that you're going to die is pretty small. That's what the actuarial tables show. But it's also the reality that nobody lives forever. And the question is, who is impacted in the event something were to happen to you? Now, if you have a family, if you're married, if you have a husband, if you have a wife, if you have kids, if you have a blended family, all of these complexities, if you're a business owner, right, you have customers, you have employees, all of these complexities get compounded as life goes on. You do nothing to organize yourself. So you have to get yourself in the mindset of it is a real potential because it will happen. There are other people that are relying on me. And what we found is that when you start framing this as you're not doing this for you, you're doing this for other people in your life. On the side of our box for the Clear Kid, it says, leave your heirs the gift of organization. Then it becomes a lot more manageable. And the question then, after you have that mindset of, okay, I'm going to take the time to do it, maybe it takes me a while, maybe it's really short, is you break things up into just actionable bits. And we've got a free roadmap on the webpage that you can go through, think about this, think about that, think about this. And you're not going to be able to organize all your information in one day. That book that your dad saw, you probably went, I don't want to sit down for 3 hours, 5 hours and fill all this stuff out. But I bet if you went over and you said, Dad, we're going to go through the book. Every time I go over, we're going to answer one more question, right? And you just started chipping away at it. Pretty soon you look back and you've got a lot of information that's going to help people out. So it's really about reframing why it's important, who's going to be impacted, what those problems are, and the benefits of doing it as well. And there's a lot of unintended consequences that can pop up that, again, if you just haven't gone through it, you're not going to know. So using some of the resources that are available to you is just going to make your life and your loved one's life a little bit easier.
That's a great solution. I'd say as organized as I am, I never thought about, hey, how about I go over there every time I go to see him, pay his bills, go grocery shopping, whatever, all the stuff that I do. Every single time I take a single question in the book and answer it. Never thought about that. So let's take a step back for a second and talk about these documents. There's so many documents we can go over, but why are they important? And let's talk about wills, living wills, power attorneys, revocable trust, whatever, any documents you want to talk about. Could you talk about what they're for, why they're important,
Yep.
and why we should have them?
Okay. Your foundational document that really is the bedrock of everything you're doing is your will. That says, in the event I die, I want my stuff to go to these people. Pretty simple. And then if you have children, you can designate who you want to be the guardian of them in the event that something were to happen to you. Now, again, if you pass away without having this document, that's okay. But the state that you live in is going to decide what order things happen. Now, when you have a will, what ends up happening is that will has to be filed with your local jurisdiction. Okay. That means it's public. So you can literally go back and find famous people's wills and see, like, oh, they left this duck to this person if somebody had like a statue duck, whatever. On the other hand, some people like trusts. And a trust is just a legal contract, and I'm overly simplifying things, that is more private. So the will has to be filed. Things in the will go through probate. There's simplified probate processes, but that can take a while too. Whereas a trust makes it so the items that you possess that are in the trust, and there are dozens of types of trust. There's a free guide that explains many of them, Introduction to Wills and Trusts on the website. Those assets that are in the trust, they're private. They don't have to go through that probate process. So there's privacy things as well. The next thing that oftentimes people talk about is your advance directives. Now, depending on where you live, advance directive can mean something different. In some places, in some states, it means you have specific forms that have to be filled out for you to have them be in effect. And I'll explain what they do in a second. In other states, an advance directive is just a general concept. It's okay. You just need to make sure that it's legal. And that could be the format, it could be the content, it could be who signs it, if there's witnesses, things of that nature. And what those documents do is it positions people to advocate for you in the event that you can't advocate for yourself. Now, a power of attorney is oftentimes one of the documents that's the key foundation of an advance directive. And that says that somebody is able to act on your behalf in the event that you can't act on your own. Now, there's different types of power of attorneys. There's power of attorney financial. That means that I have access to your bank accounts. I can make decisions for you. There's a healthcare power of attorney, or a healthcare proxy, some people call it. And that means I can make healthcare decisions for you. And what's really important when you think about both of those documents is when they come into effect. So it can be something called a springing power of attorney, where only in the event you are incapacitated does that individual have the ability to step in. They can be revoked as well. But the thing that you have to remember is that power of attorneys, they end the moment that the individual who granted that power passes away. And that's something that it's oftentimes very surprising and problematic for people. You've got power of attorney financial. During somebody's life, you're paying bills, they die, you call up the credit card company to have access to funds or pay off bills or whatnot, and they go, I need a copy of the death certificate. I can't talk to you. And they go, you can talk to me. I have power of attorney. And they go, no, your power of attorney is no longer in effect. So it's things like that you have to be aware of that you might not know. There's also other documents that are part of the advanced directives like your wishes for DNR, do not resuscitate, which is different from the actual medical order, do not resuscitate if this happens. There's something called a POLST, POLST, and a MOLST, a MOLST, but it's really in the weeds. We don't need to get into that. Come to the website. There's lots of articles that explain it to you. And those are the things that most people think about when they think of estate planning. So advanced directives, will, trust. Those are your buckets. But what we talk about at Buried in Work is comprehensive estate planning. It's really making sure, like you said, that in the event something were to happen to you, your family members are really in a good position to step in. So that is a list of all your bank accounts, a list of all your assets, a list of your income sources, a list of your family members, summaries of your will or trusts, and other documents that you have. If you have end of life organ transplant, contracts in place, because the item on your wallet, on your ID, is very different from actually donating your body to science. Ethical wills, which is a legacy way of just not bequeathing stuff, but rather your feelings. I want this to have happen, or I want this person to know something. It's the key contact information of who needs to be contacted. It's your end of life planning form of, in the event something were to happen to me, this is the recap of everything I've done. So do I have a plot somewhere? Do I want to be cremated? Who do I want to speak at my end of life ceremony? Do I want to have an end of life ceremony? And everything in between. And that's really our approach, is that you get buried in work in the event that you don't have everything in order and you try and figure it out at the last minute or after something happens for someone else. And by starting small, by walking through step by step by step, when the time comes, you're just going to be in a much better position, and so are your family.
No, I appreciate that. One of the things I learned from that answer is, well, two things actually.
Yeah.
One, I never filed my will or living will in the state before I moved to Delaware. In Pennsylvania, I had signatories and notarized and all that, but it was never filed anywhere.
You don't
So
need to.
not
You don't
sure
need to
what.
file it. So here's the
Oh,
thing.
okay.
Oftentimes, what happens is, or not oftentimes, sometimes people will file it with the state because they don't want there to be any question that they had a will. And that's one of
Okay.
the reasons why you want to have a will before you get sick, because you avoid all these challenges of someone saying, no, this isn't the real will. They changed it to keep me out of it, let's say.
Hmm.
By filing it with the state, it shows this is the actual legal will. There is a reason they took the time to do it, and it is less likely that someone is going to be able to challenge it. But typically what ends up happening when you open up probate, you have to show up with a copy of the death certificate as well as a copy of the will if you have it. And that is when that gets filed with the state. So you can file it if
Gotcha.
you want. You don't have to. If you don't, just make sure that your loved ones know where it is and all your other information, because if they don't know that it exists, for all intents and purposes, it doesn't exist if they can't find it. And then they can
Makes
deal with
sense.
filing it.
Makes sense. The other thing I learned was that the power of attorney ends when a person dies. I
Mm-hmm.
actually assumed that that was something that continued on, and that's how you handle
Yeah.
post-death things.
Yeah.
But
That's what a lot of people think, and that's what I mean. That unless you've gone through it, you just don't realize it. And it's not that it's wrong that you didn't know; you just didn't know. So typically, what happens in that instance, you either have an executor of the estate that steps in, so power of attorney ends, the person in the will that's been designated as the executor, or the state will designate an administrator to oversee the transition of the assets. That's what happens. And then if you have a trust, you have the trustee or trustees that are involved. And that can then tie into all the other people that might be involved. So your CPA, if you have one for taxes, or your attorney, if somebody helped you draft your will, they can all weigh in. But it transitions from power of attorney doing things while you're alive to your executor, administrator, or trustee.
makes sense. So let's talk about life insurance.
Mm-hmm.
And I really want to talk about some of the pros and cons, kind of misconceptions. So I have multiple insurance policies,
Mm-hmm.
professional work policies. I have policies all over the place. But how can things still go wrong even though you have life insurance policies? You might have a will that says this person gets this person gets that.
Yeah.
Talk about life insurance real quick.
All right. So there's lots of different types of life insurance. We're not going to go into the details of it. I'm going to assume that we're talking about a term life insurance policy here, or a life insurance policy that in the event something were to happen to you, your wife, your kid, somebody you designate gets paid
Yeah.
out X amount of money. All right.
Yep.
Now, for those that are listening that are curious about the other types, you can actually have insurance that pays for pets in the event that they get hurt. Pet legacy and care, we get a hub. You can have it for prepaying your funeral. That's called pre-need insurance as well, and a whole host of other stuff. But let's go back to the basics. Now, some of the mistakes that you make, the first thing, hanging easy stuff, low hanging fruit, I guess the way most people say it. I'll give an example. I was talking to somebody a few weeks ago or a little while ago, and he's in Virginia, and he was married with 2 kids, got a divorce, updated his will to say that in the event something happened to me, 50% goes to each of my kids. He's like, I'm good to go, right? And the answer is no. And the reason why is he didn't update his payable and death beneficiaries on his bank accounts, on his insurance policies, on his retirement plan. He still had his ex-wife. And what that means is those are contractual relationships. They get processed before the will does. So in the event that he got hit by that proverbial bus, all of his money, all of his payout from his insurance policy wouldn't have actually gone to his kids like he wanted. So you have to make sure that they're actually designated properly. And the second thing is you have to make sure that they're actually policies that you still want. So there was one individual that we helped. Her husband was in the hospital. He wasn't paying his bills. She went through one of the checklists that we had that said, make sure that all the important bills are identified. It doesn't matter if your Netflix goes unpaid, but it's really important if you don't pay your mortgage, let's say. And the insurance policy was about to term out and final term out. She was going to lose everything. So 2 days from then, it was going to end. She called up, got an extension, overnighted the check. Husband passed away shortly after. And then a month and a half later, she got paid off the $403,000 in her policy that she would have lost. So other mistake is not actually understanding what your policy is and what the benefits of it are. And the third thing is that some types of policies, quite frankly, you just don't need anymore. You might be paying into it where the benefit isn't worth what you're paying in because you had it to protect somebody else in your family, your husband, your spouse. And if that individual passes away or the premium happens or something happens in your life when you have more assets or less assets, maybe you don't need those policies anymore. So you really have to revisit them, not necessarily on an annual basis, but we say do it every April 16th, pay your taxes. Next day, then you do your review to think about what those policies look like.
I like that. So April 15th, pay the tax man, or March 15th for business people. April 16th, do your estate review and all that.
Yep.
So on that note, it's funny you mentioned taxes because the next question I was going to ask was about tax implications with estate planning and whether it's, leaving money to someone and those considerations and whether, the myths around that or anything regarding tax liabilities, tax considerations you should make when you're doing your estate planning.
All right. Most people are like, oh my God, the estate tax, it's horrible. Odds are you're not going to be impacted by a federal estate tax. For 2024, single payer taxpayer, where single individual federal estate and lifetime gift tax exemption is $13.61 million per person. So unless you have that much money that you're leaving to one person, it's not going to be a problem. And that gets doubled if you have 2 people in a family, like a husband, spouse, right? Or husband, wife, rather, 2 spouses. So estate tax, odds are you're not going to have to deal with it. But if you want to, come to the website. We've got resources for you. And the other one is inheritance tax that only a few states in the country, give. So odds are very high that estate inheritance tax is not going to impact you at all. But if you do have a lot of assets in your family that you want to be protected, that's when you should be meeting with a professional to talk about tax, protection, minimization strategies through trusts and other mechanisms. What's really important for people to understand is that there are sometimes that there are ways to minimize taxes, avoiding probate also, that speed up the transition of the assets. And I'd say it's more important for most people. Understand what you have and what will happen in the event that you pass away. Understand what will happen for your accounts rather than trying to minimize taxes. So that's on the front end. On the back end, oftentimes you actually have to file a final estate tax return for the individual. And there's different reasons and timelines of when you need to do that. So unfortunately, taxes don't end when you die. Somebody else has to pick up the slack after you're gone.
Yeah, even after you die, Uncle Sam says, give me mine.
Yeah.
So here, maybe funny, may not be funny topic to talk about. Talking about conflicts with, obviously, as someone who's passing away, you don't really know the conflicts that are happening after you die. But as someone who's still here or being a part of a large family or whatever, if you're part of the will, talk about some of the stories you've heard with conflicts and, how they were resolved, weren't resolved, or hopefully no police were called, that type of stuff.
How much time do you have?
Uh, Plenty. Let's go.
All right. People get very emotional oftentimes when people pass away, and it can bring out the absolute best in people, but it can
Mm.
also bring out the worst in people. And we all have visions of the movies that we watched where a lawyer walks into a room that's, draped in rich mahogany and leather seats with a portfolio of, I'm going to read the will. And the family members are all really interested. And then you see one family member get really upset when they leave XYZ to this individual and not the other person. Now, that movie doesn't happen that much, or that scene in the movie, but people do get very territorial over items, over things, especially when they have sentimental value. Sentimental value not only in item but also in action. So mom would have wanted this at her funeral. I know this in my heart, when the other person's going, that's not what mom would have wanted at all. Conflict. I want that thing in the house. Mom told me that was mine. No, mom told me that was mine. Conflict. So it's really important that by organizing your information, you don't literally have to go down to the detail of every single thing, but the really important things, the things that might cause stress for other people, if you have those notated, if you have them written down, it just eliminates that entire process of a potential conflict. And that's really what we're trying to help people do, is leave your heirs the gift of organization, avoid that conflict, let them focus on, moving forward, moving on in their life. Um, and it just makes it a lot easier for them. Now, after my dad passed away, I had a friend tell me something that is probably one of the most true things I've ever heard in my life. And that was, it won't get better, but it will get easier. And I think that's really the situation that you need to keep in mind, is leave it in a situation for your loved ones, if possible, where that it will get better, where that starts, or it will get easier where that starts, is not in a place of conflict to begin in the first place.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's a conversation that we don't want to have, right, to begin with, and it's
Mm-hmm.
preparation and steps that we probably don't want to take to begin with. But when we put it in the context of, listen, by taking these steps, regardless of how uncomfortable they are and how bad they feel sometimes, and the thought process of what that actually means, everything after you're gone will be made so much easier by you doing these 10, 15 things, whatever it is. So I get it.
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely.
But to go for something that may or may not be comical to something that's not funny at all, let's talk about scams. And so I'd say probably up there amongst the worst of the worst people in the world are people who take advantage of people who are emotionally compromised or just grieving, for lack of a better way to put it. How do people avoid scams as it comes with financial planning, um, funeral planning, all estate planning, all that stuff?
Okay. One of the things you mentioned earlier was that people oftentimes have to deal with funeral homes. They purchase things, they may buy things that they might not know that they need. You have a right as a consumer to always ask a funeral home for their GPL. It's called their general price list. All right. By the FTC, they have to have that. We have an explanation of what that FTC rule is and what they need on our website. It's in the end of life funeral planning hub. We also have a description of all of the funeral traditions for Christian, Jewish, Hindu, LGBTQ plus, secular, and Muslim, and a few others. We also have a way that in the event something happens at your funeral that you don't necessarily agree with or you have issues, there's a complaint form that you can file with the FTC. But when we talk about the scams, and this isn't just, hey, I may have overpaid for something, or I was confused, or somebody didn't provide something in the service that should have been provided that we paid for, we have to be really cognizant that there are people in the world that like to prey on people at their most vulnerable times. This does not happen often, but there are stories that we have seen, and definitely true stories, where people have actually watched the news for obituaries, and during the funeral, when they know that the most loved ones in the family are going to be at the funeral, that's when they go in and rob the house. Right. I've heard stories of people going through and saying, okay, we're going to take all the jewelry out and put it on the bed so we know what's there. And then we'll do our divvying up as the family in proper accordance with, the transfer. And while the things were out, somebody happened to get in the house at some point in time and stole everything. Right. We have the tangent of phishing, which we've all seen those emails. They come to our cell phones now. If you're not used to paying the bills, people know this. You might start getting text messages. Oh, your bill's due. This is this. Send your password. You're going to get $700 from CVS if you click this link. You're not getting $700. No, it's not real. So, as family members, we have a renewed obligation, which is pretty hard sometimes, to train our parents in a way. If you get an email that you don't think is real, the first thing you should do is not open the actual attachment, but look at the email, because CVS isn't emailing you from cvs@gmail.com, right? So it's these type of things that we really need to be cognizant of. You need to take a step back. You need to go, is this real? What needs to be protected? Because there are, unfortunately, a lot of scams out there that prey on people that, aren't at necessarily the best mind space.
No, yeah, and like I said, probably up there, worst to worst people are people who prey on those who are grieving or planning or some combination of all that in that time period of life. Especially when the higher tragic ones, the fires and all
Mm-hmm.
murders and all types of stuff. When you're probably maxed out on emotion for those.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's kind of it's kind of the same advice as the guy who's going to make you rich from India, or
Mm-hmm.
the you won this,
Nigerian
click this
prince.
link. Yeah, there you go, Nigerian prince, or the one I keep getting recently, which is there's an incomplete address on your package, right? So click this link and fix it. Like, dude,
Mm-hmm.
come on, I wasn't born yesterday. But
Yeah.
last question in this segment, and so I started this talking about a low percentage of people, about a third, who actually have estate planning done in this country. What's the one thing, if you had to have a conversation with your best friend, what's the one thing you would tell them to get them to be a contributor to getting that percentage up just a little higher?
Okay. I'm going to say two things. First thing is that percentage is for all Americans, typically over 18 and older. That number drastically increases, though, 60%, 70% higher once you hit age, I think, 60, 65 and above. So as people get older, they do create more wills, trusts, and start thinking about this. So that makes sense. But overall, there is a massive problem in this country where we have to focus on getting people to organize more. For those that want to get started, the number one piece of advice is start. It's not hard. We have a free estate summary worksheet on our webpage. It is 3 pages long. It will take you literally 25 minutes, 30 minutes to fill out. It asks you if you have a will, if you have a trust, who needs to be contacted, a short list of your assets, short list of your bank accounts, income, things of that nature. That is really easy. It will save your family members a lot of time. And then you notify 3 family members or your key people in your life. This is what I filled out. And from there, that's when you start doing a will. That's when you start educating yourself. That's when you start going through the process. But it doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter what you have. There is no right place, no wrong place to start. You start where you are today, and then you create that basic foundation today for tomorrow, and then your estate plan evolves with you as you get older, as your situation changes. Because Dave today is very different from Dave 10 years ago. It's going to be very different from Dave 10 years in the future. So start now, start simple, and let your estate plan evolve with you over time.
Okay. So that's all for the Q&A segment. Now move to my favorite segment, I guess, called First Thoughts. First Thoughts is sponsored by SRA Solutions. SRA Solutions provides complete, robust, precise, and reusable real-world solutions, satisfying and resolving your business needs. For more information, visit rebrand.ly/DHPSRE. So, Adam, the way First Thoughts works is I offer a word or phrase to my guests to get their first thoughts. Obviously, you're not privy to these because that would ruin the entire segment. Are you ready for some first thoughts?
Let's do it. I like this.
All right. So, this one's kind of cool. And actually, I didn't discover this one until about 10, 15 years ago when I just saw a random email, thought it was spam. And I said, let me click on it. Let me see. I'm on a ghost computer. I don't care if that one gets a virus. But turns out I actually did get something. So, unclaimed property. What's your first thought?
Real, find it. We literally helped somebody find over $35,000. We have a list of every single unclaimed property database in the country, both state and federal. For those that are unfamiliar with what it is, if you have an account that is inactive for a long time, or you have a gym membership and you cancel it and they owe you $15, that company is not allowed to hold on to those $15 forever. After a certain amount of time, legally, they have to return it to someone, and that someone is the state or the federal government, depending on the category. And then it's for you to claim. So one of the things that we have in the Clear Kit is a listing of every single one of your addresses where you've ever lived. It can take a long time if you move around a lot. And then you use those addresses to go to the web page, unclaimed property. You go to the state that you're in, and then you just start searching by address. And you will be surprised. Most people have some amount of unclaimed property somewhere, and you fill out a form, you send in a copy of your license, and guess what? You get free money that's actually your money. So a lot of people think it's a scam. It's not. There are unbelievable amounts of money out there that's waiting for you to find.
Yeah, I'd say 10 years ago, I mean, a guy in much less financially comfortable state, I got a $500 here and 750 there. I'm like, woo, I'm rich.
Yeah.
And then next week I'm broke again. But still,
Yeah, but here's the thing. You don't have to only search for yourself. I found stuff
yeah,
for my wife's family. I found stuff for my family. You can even do it for your friends. All you need is a name, and then you can figure
yeah.
out, oh, this is the name, this address. Then you send them the link to fill it out.
I'll take 1% commission on that.
You can.
My
Yeah.
income.
There are companies out there that will charge to run the searches for you, but you can do it all yourself. Yes. We are one of those companies, I guess. If you called on and said, hey, we want you to do it for us, we're happy to help out, but we recommend that you do it on your own.
Yeah. All right. So next first thought, and we kind of touched on this a little bit, but I want to get your first thought on this. GRIN funerals. What's your first thought?
I think it's cool. You're unique, just like everybody else. Everybody has their own, perception of what they want to have happen to themselves, and you're allowed to change your mind. So there's a lot of conversation right now. Are funerals better than cremation? They have carbon footprints. There's gas cremation. There's now alkaline hydrolysis, which is a water cremation. You can be buried traditionally, but then you're utilizing land. Like you said earlier, you can be turned into a pod and turned into a tree. You can be shot into space. You can be recomposed into a forest. You can be turned into coral. There's a whole host of different things out there. And what's important isn't how you go necessarily, but rather what happens to yourself if that is in line and resonates with what you want to have happen. So if people say, you know what, I want to be a tree so my family members can come and visit me in a forest, I think that's amazing, and go for
it. Excuse me. I've never heard of the coral one before. I have to look that. Not that I want to, but I'm just curious. How does that even work? I mean, corals are so sensitive to temperatures and light and everything else. How do you? Yeah.
Yeah. So the coral one is pretty neat. Effectively, what happens is they take your remains, and then you get turned into the shell, sort of like a concrete form that coral can then live on in the ocean. So someone can then go and dive to where your spot is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. I think I like the tree one better.
Yeah. The name of the company, if I remember, it's Eternal Reefs. Yeah, Eternal Reef. It's Living Legacies is what they call it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to check it out. Not that I'm planning to be turned into it at any point, anytime soon. Just for my
but you never know. You never know. Could happen tonight.
Yeah.
Could happen right now.
Hit by a bus.
Hopefully not.
Yeah. So last first thought, and speaking of legacy and storytelling, what's your first thought?
I think that more people should do it, and a lot of people love the idea and just don't get around to it because it's kind of the last thing. I personally don't think that many people are going to be. I personally don't believe that many people are going to be remembered in 300 years. Now, there are a few people, not to talk politics, Donald Trump, Biden, Elon Musk, things of that level, that nature, that stature will be remembered. But you and me, like our kids, if we have kids, they're going to remember us, their kids, grandpa. But then how far back? Like, can you name your great-great-grandfather? I don't know.
No.
So the question then is, what are you actually focusing your time on? And that's your legacy, in my view. So you can explain to the people that care about you, that will take the time to learn about you, what you think should happen, what's important in life. We've all heard the saying, nobody says on their deathbed that they worked more. They wish that they spent more time with their family and doing things. But if that's not the legacy that we leave, where people will be remembering us for all eternity, then the legacy that we need to leave is leaving the world in a better place than how we found it. And I think that legacy messaging and instilling those values into family members, into friends, is really important. You can do it in videos now. There's new tech that's coming out where you'll be able to have a conversation with somebody based on their emails and their tone. So it's AI generated. But At bottom, your legacy. If you want to leave a letter, if you want to leave a note, if you want to leave videos, if you want to write things down, if you want to make a book, if you want to have a family heirloom, if you want to do an ancestry chart, if you want to have somebody that goes through everything and helps you do it, all of those options are out there. But for me, it's a question of what impact is my legacy going to leave, as opposed to finding that personal historian to help me on that journey.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, and I actually pulled that one from your website, obviously, to see what you thought about it. But yeah, thinking about time capsules. Does anybody do that anymore?
You went deep on the website, Dave. I love this.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I do my research. It's just those things kind of struck me. But yeah, the whole nobody does a buried time capsule, I don't think anymore. But
no, they
shooting
do.
the space time capsule. Do they?
They literally do. People have time capsules where they will, maybe it's buried in the earth, or maybe it is, here's this, and I don't want family members to actually open this up for 20 years.
The tin can, the old tin can one.
Yeah.
It's curious though, 300 years from now, not that any of us will be around to see what somebody else knows about 300 years before them, but it'd be curious to say, hey, Adam, this guy named Adam 300 years ago, like, wow, that whole idea, kind of mind blowing.
Yeah. Like you live in Delaware. You walk around downtown, there's probably a statue of somebody that was one of the founding fathers of Delaware. But outside of that, you probably don't know many people that had a story in Delaware 300 years ago, right?
Not at all. So, select few. It's a select few crowd.
Yeah.
All right, so that's all for First Thoughts, but this season I am turning the power over to my guests in a segment I call TO First Thoughts. So, Adam, the way that works is my guests get to fire a first thought at me to get my thoughts on something or topic or phrase. So, Adam, if you had to, what would your first thought for me be?
All right, my first thought for you, you have done a countless number of podcasts, interviews, you do your prep, you do your work beforehand and your research. Are there any common threads that you've seen across all of the people that you've spoken with that you think people need to highlight more? And the follow-up to that is, what's the question that you wish people asked you the most?
Oh, that's a very in-depth question. I'm pretty sure it's the most in-depth question I've ever gotten. A common theme across all guests. I would say probably most of my guests are humble. I'd say majority of my guests are humble in the sense that when I do all the research on their website, their LinkedIn, their social media, they're not, very brash in the way they present themselves. It's very informational, very transactional. It's not very, over the top, which I don't know if that's just the way I kind of tailor my guest stream or if that's just the guest I happen to get.
Yeah.
But it's good to see people who they don't use social media or internet or the web to, generate money in the sense of it. Look at me, look at me. It's more so here's some information I need to share. I think it'd be the world a better place. And that's kind of the lane that I'm in, which is fine. What was the second question? I forgot that one.
Second question was, what is the question that you as people asked you? But I might change that up. I might change it because that's very specific. If you were to be a guest on somebody's podcast, what would the topic be?
Probably the title of the book that I want to write at some point someday, which is Survivor's Recourse. It's just it'd be about the journey of my life and so many stories that people don't know about me personally, and very much up and down, hilly. And you're only seeing this if you're on YouTube or Spotify. You can't see my hand going if you're listening on Apple. But the journey I've been through personally to get to where I am today, that would definitely be the topic we talk about, because it's never ending. There's so many stories of things that I've experienced, losses I've had, difficult situations I've been through and gotten through, and then also the other side, the accomplishments I've had. So,
well, just looking behind you, it looks like you've got a picture of your dad. Maybe it looks like you're on the Black Lives Matter street in DC. Maybe even an album drop or something Dave said on the right-hand side. I don't know.
So these are all the guests that I've had. Everything below the top are all the guests I've had, with the exception of pictures of myself.
Okay.
The top three are my uncle, grandmother, and uncle, who are all passed away now. My uncle 2 years ago from cancer. So he was like a second father to me. So kind of like a father to me.
So it's family and community then.
Yeah, exactly. So other than that, they're all guests, the pictures from the guest episodes that they had that I created. And then the other ones are just me filling in.
So you're doing the artwork and everything yourself too?
Yeah.
That's cool. Well done,
Yeah,
man.
thank you.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I do have a couple invites up here on other podcasts, so looking forward to doing that 2025. I got so much going on. I barely have time to do my own podcast. But
Okay.
yeah. So yeah, that would be the topic. But before I let you go, what I like to do is have my guests take one last moment, and if there's anything you want to talk about or anything you want to promote, feel free to do so now.
I think promotion, just come to the website if we can help you out, buriedinwork.com. And if there's something that resonates with you, let us know. If there's something that you need help with that's not on the website, let us know. Maybe we'll create it. Um, it's challenging. It's confusing. Estate planning is not something, though, that you shouldn't be focused on. Take the time, just a few minutes. If you want to get one of our games, that would be great. If you want to get a clear kit, trust me, your family's going to thank you for it. And most importantly, go listen to more of Dave's Heads podcast. It's fun.
There you go. And get the card game, because that sounds like the best way, fastest lane to get into this whole planning as well. So
Yeah.
definitely do that. But Adam, thank you for number one, stepping into Dave's head, but two, being the season finale guest, because I don't do episodes in December. It's my birthday month. It's just a Capricorn thing. And I don't do episodes in January because I'm getting the year started. So next episode will drop in February, but I thank you for appearing on the season finale. And as I've said to all my guests this year, have a great rest of 2024. My favorite segment of my podcast is my GRIN, which stands for Great Reason to Be in Love with Now. Before we talk about the great reason to be in love with now for this episode, check out Opus Clip. Opus Clip is the #1 AI video clipping and editing tool that repurposes your long videos into short, viral videos in one click. For more information, visit rebrand.ly/DHP Opus Clip. That's rebrand.ly/DHP Opus Clip. As the holidays and New Year approach, and the best birthday ever, I look forward to my annual time off. I talked about in the opening segment how, as has been the case for the prior 4 seasons, we take off in December and January. One, to celebrate the best birthday ever, but two, to recharge, renew, come back strong for another year, personally, professionally, and also with this podcast. An article published by justalittlecreative.com entitled 7 Ways to Ensure Your Friend's December Birthday Feels Special and Not Overshadowed by Christmas talks about the struggle that us, and I say us because I'm one of them, December babies can have. It can be frustrating. Everyone is preoccupied with long to-do lists, jam-packed with a social calendar for the holidays leading up to Christmas. So you got Thanksgiving, you got the religious holidays, you've got youth and children ending in school, so maybe they're coming home. There's so much stuff going on that us Christmas time babies sometimes feel very frustrated and left out. Celebrations for December birthdays can often be combined with other festive celebrations, postponed until January, or forgotten about altogether, which is 100% an absolute shame. But she offers 7 simple ways to ensure they have a truly special December birthday, which isn't overshadowed by Christmas. We'll go through them really quickly. Number 1, ask them how they want to celebrate. How do we want to celebrate our birthdays? Maybe they want to do something actually Christmassy, which I do not. But the first way they say to show kindness and thoughtfulness towards your friend's December birthday is to put their wishes first. Asking them outright will also make things easier for you to do. Do they want to just kick up their feet and watch Christmas, movies on repeat with some hot cocoa with little Baileys maybe? Or do they want to go out and party the town? Do they want to travel? Do they want to just go to dinner? Do they just want to order sushi and watch snowflakes fall? Very random, but okay. Ask them how they want to celebrate. Maybe they don't want to do anything at all. Number 2, make time for them so that you can properly celebrate their birthday in a non-Christmassy way. Now, this isn't just for Christmas. This is any holidays, right? So Thanksgiving is coming up, Christmas, New Year's, other stuff in January too. You have different days, and this is all holidays. So you got July 4th, all the major holidays that can be somewhat limiting in how much you can actually do because they're such big holidays. But make time for them. Find time to make time for them. December is always busy. Everybody knows this. But don't let the festive busyness affect your friend's birthday. Big key, big statement here. Get organized early. Now, granted, I'm a December baby. Usually when I plan for my own birthday, there's one year I booked a trip January 5th or 6th for that December 1 because I know how quickly time can pass. I'll look up and it's March, and I'll look up again, it's August, and I still would not have planned something. So I try to stay on top of that. But two, I know how crazy prices can be around the holidays and New Year. And so lock in really early for a lot of things if you can, especially if it involves travel. Because you don't want to find yourself out there trying to book something and you're paying 3, maybe even 4 times regular rate because of when you booked it. So make time for them, but also get organized early when you're trying to make time for them. Number 3, pick a non-Christmassy venue and decorate wisely. They say picking a venue to celebrate a birthday can be hard in December, as everywhere tends to be decked out with Christmas decorations, playing Christmas music, songs on repeat. Oh, holy night. If you decide to host something, I don't know why I just busted out in the song there, but it's okay. If you decide to host something at home for your friend's birthday, try to keep celebrations away from the Christmas tree. So I'm kind of on the fence about this one, right? I don't want to make it about Christmas because it's my birthday. It's a completely separate day, but it does make for great photos, right? I mean, we know what time of birthday or what time of the year my birthday is, so why not embrace the Christmas card that can be created out of these pictures? Put it near the tree. Put it near the decorations. It don't matter to me as long as the actual celebration is about the birthday. I don't think it really matters that it's close to the tree, not close to the tree. But that's what they say. Number 4, they say take time selecting a special birthday card for them. Now, this is something I do appreciate. Giving me a birthday card and saying happy birthday in it, that's kind of weird. Not gonna lie, a little weird. But they say one way to ensure your friends still feel special is if they're surrounded by gorgeous, thoughtful birthday cards from the ones that they love. I agree. It's very easy. Hallmark has tons and tons of cards sections. You can order them online now. I'll maybe give you a secret, but there's a nice card that you can have. You can buy. I think it's called pop cards or something like that, and it actually opens up and expands to different shapes and things. Look it up online. I'm pretty sure I'm getting the card manufacturer wrong because I've ordered from I don't know how many times in my life, but I still don't remember what they're called. But the card does matter too. It conveys the message. It conveys how much you appreciate the fact that they're alive. Right? That's what a birthday card says. Happy birthday to you. Glad you're still breathing. Kinda, right? A little more in depth than that, of course. Number 5. Do not, I repeat, do not wrap their birthday gift in Christmas wrapping paper. I didn't know that this needed to be said, but please don't do that. And this go. I mean, obviously, I don't think there's July 4th or Memorial Day wrapping paper. That'd be kind of weird. But or maybe Valentine's Day, right? Great example, Valentine's Day. Don't wrap their birthday gift in Valentine's wrapping paper, assuming wrapping paper for Valentine's Day exists, or put it in a Valentine's Day gift bag, right? Be unique. It's a unique day. Even if their birthday is on Valentine's Day or even if their birthday is on Christmas, take the extra step. Find birthday wrapping paper. Find a birthday gift bag. Find something. Don't give it to them in Christmas wrapping paper or Valentine's birthday wrapping paper for that matter. Please, for the love of God, don't do that. Number 6, here's another one that I didn't think needed to be said, but don't combine their birthday and Christmas cards and gifts together. Now, we talked about wrapping paper and we talked about bags. The actual gifts themselves. Do not, I repeat, do not. You hear the enunciation? Do not give a Christmas child or Christmas time birthday child one gift talking about this is your Christmas and birthday gift. Do not do that. The scarring that will ensue, you will never, ever recover from. I was privileged in many ways as a child that those who loved me saw Christmas and my birthday as 2 separate days that God made. It's a true statement. Even if they are born on the holiday itself, Please do not give them one gift and say, here's your gift for both of those. Please don't do that. I 100% beg of you. Don't use December as an excuse to combine birthday and Christmas cards or gifts together. The important thing is to make them feel special on their birthday. Make them actually feel special. Don't be lazy. Number 7, pretty simple. A hug and happy birthday can mean the world, right? We talked about asking them what they want to do and plans and cards and gifts and days and wrapping paper and all this stuff. But sometimes a simple showing up, giving someone a hug and saying, I just wanted to say happy birthday to you is an extraordinary way to show that they mean something to you. Just a hug and a happy birthday. That easy. Number 8, just ensure on the day you give your friend a massive hug, wish them happy birthday. I'm sorry, this is actually number 7. And find a little way to make them feel special and loved. When it boils down to it, showing that love and care is the most important thing. That reiterates the point. I forgot that there were 7. There were only 7. But I do actually have, this is why I actually said 8. I have a bonus one for you. Not included in the article. This is a bonus one. And I'm almost as passionate about this as the giving 2 gifts for or 1 gift for the 2 days thing. Absolutely, 100% do not celebrate with a half birthday. There's no such thing as a half birthday. Half my body wasn't born on one day and the other one 6 months from now. There is one date. Celebrate it. Put the effort in. Make them feel special. Do not do a half birthday. Please don't do that. I beg of you. Do not do a half birthday. If anyone says they actually appreciate it, they really don't. We're celebrating something happened. Okay, so we're doing birthday another time. Cool. We're not doing half birthdays. Nope. I want a whole birthday. Thank you. I don't want a half a turkey for Thanksgiving. I don't really eat turkey like that, but listen to the point. I don't want a half turkey for Thanksgiving. I want the whole thing. Right? Right. We can agree with that. Right. Just putting it out there. I want to thank Adam Zuckerman for stepping to Dave's head and really conveying some really amazing information around estate planning and family planning and funeral planning and life insurance and all the different forms that we talked about and the different things you need to establish and have a solid estate plan, care plan, and all those things. I think it's important conversation this time of the year when we come together as families, and every year we see 1 or 2 missing that was there a year ago. It's important to properly set our families up to deal with and handle the inevitable. None of us are living forever. And so let's take the time to properly plan our estates, properly plan our care, properly plan next steps as we go through the journey and the path of life. Check them out on Instagram at Buried in Work, on LinkedIn, Buried in Work, Facebook, Buried in Work, YouTube at Buried in Work if you know how ads work on YouTube, website buriedinwork.com, and on Spotify, check out his podcast, Buried in Work Podcast. Support our sponsors and partners, SRE Solutions Inc. for all your PC support, troubleshooting, website design, and so much more needs. Check them out at rebrand.ly/DHPSRE. That's rebrand.ly/DHPSRE. And Adapt to Adopt for all your support around adoption and those youth who need so much in this world. Check out Adapt to Adopt at rebrand.ly/DHPA2A. That's DHPA2A. And our partner Opus Clip for all your AI automation, new world we live in now, turning your large clips into short viral clips. Check out Opus Clip at rebrand.ly/DHP Opus Clip. That's DHP Opus Clip. And if you're interested in partnering or sponsoring with Dave's Head in season 6 as we approach that time, reach out to me on any of my social media and we can make it happen. This season I started something new where I would end every episode with a quote. I thought with the times that we're approaching and the new year that's coming, it made sense for this quote that I'm going to leave you here with now, or leave with you here now. It goes like this. Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. Don't be trapped by dogma. which is living with the results of other people's thinking. Don't let the noise of others' opinions drown out your own inner voice. And most important, have the courage to follow your heart and intuition. They somehow already know what you truly want to become. Everything else is secondary. That's a quote by the late Steve Jobs, who was one of the co-founders and leaders and all that for Apple, visionaries of Apple. I think the best parts of that quote are the very first sentence and the very last sentence. The very first sentence, your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. And the last sentence, everything else is secondary. Your time is primary. What you do with it is primary. How you spend it is primary. Who you give it to is primary. Everything else is secondary. As we flow into the new year, we come together as families and friends and so many more things. I'm doing a Friendsgiving this coming weekend, so I'm looking forward to that. And Thanksgiving dinner, looking forward to that. And doing a tour of Delaware next month, I'm looking forward to that. And celebrating a birthday and New Year and all that stuff. But as we come together throughout that time period with friends and family, and as we realize the time that we have is so precious, make sure everything else is secondary. The ones you love, let them know it. The people you want to spend time with, spend it. The health that you have, take care of it. So adjustments, estate planning, and special celebrations. All great reasons to be in love with now. Take care. Have an amazing rest of 2024. And thank you for all your support over these past 5 seasons. And as we move into season 6 next year, I look forward to all of your feedback, suggestions, and guests that are going to join us next season. Thank you again. Thank you. Thank you. Take care. That's all for this episode of Dave's Head. New episodes released on the second and fourth Friday of the month. For all things Dave's Head, check out our website at daveshead.card.co. Subscribe to watch new episodes on YouTube or Spotify video, or to listen via your preferred podcast player, go to anchor.fm/Dave's Head Pod. Thank you for watching or listening. As always, enjoy life, because life should be fun. Take care.